Yo, it's been a long time coming. Back in the building, man. Another fresh episode, politics, as usual. I'm your moderator, semi-host of the event here, Matt Whitener, joined by one half of our hosting duo, the good brother, DeMarco Davidson. Marco, what's going on, brother?
Man, trying to maintain my sanity, brother. So it's so great to be back, though. And I can't wait to the other dynamic, the other half of the dynamic duo returns as well.
He had to run off into like a fire, like save the world or something this afternoon.
Yeah, man. Cape Crusader style, man. So yeah, man. So now many blessings to him, though. Hope all is well.
So we got there's no shortage of things, man. Like, there's so many things that since the last time that we jumped on, man, coming back off the hiatus that you can get into. But here's the beautiful thing about the world of politics and the political landscape. There's always something to get. No matter what happens, there's gonna be something.
Always something, man. There's always something, man. And yeah, more things change, the more they say the same sometimes too. So yeah, so let's get into it, man. Let's get into it.
Absolutely, man. So there's going to be a few different things that are going to hit both on the local St. Louis side, also, statewide, maybe a couple of little items that are affecting everybody on the bigger scale as well. But first things first, first of all, I want to congratulate you on the piece that you submitted to the St. Louis American regarding the candidacy of Tishaura Jones. Worked out well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, it's incredible, man. And I mean, I really appreciate everything. I'm excited to see what happens. She has already, Mayor, let me make sure I put some respect on her name. Mayor Tishaura Jones is already become a force of nature within the political realm of St. Louis City specifically, but even connected and doing some things with St. Louis County, and just incredible. And I can't remember the last time I've seen a St. Louis City mayor and let me just go ahead and throw this in here as well. U.S. Representative Cori Bush show up in different places and different spaces for them to actually tour the medium security jailhouse, for them to secure the Justice Center. I mean, not secure, but to tour. To get a first like real life example, like to see what's going on, to actually discuss and talk with the inmates, like with those, how some people say, caged citizens, to actually have conversations with them. And it's not that often. That doesn't happen on a regular, or at least make sure that people see that happening too. For them to already have discussions with the water company here in St. Louis City, that is one of the best. St. Louis City has some of the best water because of the process that takes place. So they recognize that this is extremely important, things like that. So, and hopefully we can get some more things going. That really does touch a lot of the residents, specifically on North City and North County as well. So we shall see. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I think that those are some of the things that you see right away in Mayor Jones's administration that's going to be different. The fact that she's out front, getting involved in things, throwing her weight behind, the things that are going on a state level that impact St. Louis too. I mean, I think that those are some of the things that really were you talk about, what was going on with the workhouse situation in St. Louis and whatnot. I think that one of the things that not surprised me, that's the wrong way. One of the things that stood out to me is how heavy-handed she struck down with that, and how immediately she followed up with the things that she said about the police headcount and things of that nature. I mean, there's a lot that has gone on, I think, that isn't necessarily getting just the wow factor that I think it might deserve.
Yeah, definitely. So, and this is one of the things that's interesting, right? I had a conversation with a friend of my mother. So this gentleman is easily 30 plus years my senior. He doesn't live here anymore in St. Louis, but he owns a couple of houses and properties because of family still here. He lives like in Maryland. But he came and we had a conversation. He said, I'm so excited to see that Black folks finally got together and finally got Tishaura in, right? And I had to kind of like bust his bubble a little bit, like, which Black folks are you referring to? Because when we saw certain elements, when we saw how a nice amount of the Board of Aldermen supporting Lewis Reed before the primary. And even those older people who won still were like, I don't like approval voting. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. But in the same voice, they still turned around and was like, oh, well, congratulations, Tishaura. Like, congratulations. Like, but I don't like approval voting. So it wasn't the elected Black people that got Tishaura, got behind Tishaura. Again, I want to make sure I put respect on her name, Mayor Jones. It wasn't like that. And we see when people see things like that, when the public say, wait a minute, I thought we wanted this person, I thought we was aiming or going in this direction, but our older person is not. Now I think that starts where people starting to wake up, starting to recognize the powers of an older person, the abilities of an older person, and now some of them are being looked at differently because they did not support now Mayor Jones initially, but then also, like you said, how she came in and like, hey, this police budget, these 98 positions that's been allocated for but never filled. Yep, that got to go. These positions have not been filled for several years. They got to go. So this goes back to when we discussed defund the police. Like, a lot of people don't like that phrase. A lot of people don't like it. It means reallocation to other areas. So there will be a reallocation from the 98 positions that's not filled to social workers, to training, to other aspects of policing, other aspects of hopefully safety, public safety.
So, I mean, I think that's a good ad. You just went down two avenues I actually wanted to ask you about and kind of get your thoughts about that, because I definitely know where you stand as far as, the idea of defund the police, what that looks like. We've talked about that, here. You can go back to some of the earlier versions of the show and hear some of our thoughts about that. But, where does that reallocation get authorized through? Who's going to be in control of that money? Who's going to make sure that if it's taken away from the head count, it's going to land where it needs to? And the reason why I ask that is because I remember a few years ago when the vote happened to not fund the stadium for the Rams. But then at the same time, the tax bill that was going to fund it got passed. And I was like, well, so where's this money going now? Sometimes the two shoes don't drop together,
No, not at all, man. And you actually bring up a great question too. And it's interesting also. And so with that, I gotta bring up two different points. One, don't be surprised if people start saying, oh, the mayor got way too much power now. Don't be surprised, because it was people, when certain people are in position of power, then they want to make sure they have more power. So like at one point in time, the chief of police was voted on, but then it was like, no, that should be something that the mayor appoints. The public safety director should be voted. No, that's gonna be something that the mayor appoints. Now that we have Mayor Tishaura Jones in office, she now gets to appoint people like the public safety director, like the chief of police, and they can basically run her agenda, if we want to call it that. And
platform is
her platform, agenda platform. And here's what I want to make sure I bring this up too, because we looking at like like you said, that heavy like wow factor. Where did that come from? It came from, again, it wasn't just the elected Black older people who didn't support Mayor Jones, but it was the grassroots organizations, it was the community leaders, it was people like Kayla Reed with Action St. Louis who led her organization and led people. It was people like Blake from Art City Defenders, who was leading certain efforts. Milton, Inez, several others who were leading the Bail Project. And all of them collaborating and was in coalition to closing the workhouse. You had people like my pastor, Reverend Michelle Higgins, who actually did the prayer at Mayor Jones' inauguration, who were leading these efforts. So these are now, so why I made it look like it's Mayor Tishaura Jones' platform or agenda. It's really the people's agenda. It's really the grassroots organization's agenda that's being played out, and they've canvassed the neighborhoods, they've canvassed the city, from the north side to south side, to hear and listen to people, to see what they want. So this is what's also playing out. And I think Mayor Jones knows. I think she is very clear that she knows where her help comes from. Yeah, in the biblical sense, right? And so she knows where it came from. So that's one reason why she's like, yeah, it makes sense. But then also, again, Mayor Jones is probably to me one of the most diverse, or not even diverse, I would say has seen quite a bit outside of St. Louis. So she knows what's possible as well. So it's just a matter of, can she continue to lay out these whether we want to call them progressive platforms, and can she get people in St. Louis to those progressive platforms to get us across the finish line as well?
So I think that's a great point to bring up, though, is that we all know that obviously in politics, I don't think it's ever been more, in modern times at least, more separate, more polarizing right now than it's been at any point. What does she need to still do to heed to not necessarily the other half, but maybe those that aren't as far along her agenda as possible? What are the things that she can do to kind of move St. Louis together, move it along as much as it can as a unified group?
Yeah, so I would say stick to her word for real. I would say, because, and this is one of the great things about this, because we had approval voting. If we did not have approval voting, I'm not 100% sure if we would have a Mayor Tishaura Jones. I'm not sure. I would love to think so. I would really love to think
Let's
so.
talk about that. Talk about that. What did you see? Because we talked about approval voting. We talked about the difference and what it meant and how it would play out. What did you see in the process this time that was better, worse, something that might change as people get more used to what they're dealing with in that form of voting? Like, what did you take away from that process and how it benefited Mayor Jones?
So how we talked about how when it comes to approval voting is pretty much based off of who do you support, like for the nonpartisan primary that happened in March. People who had a chance to be able to vote for as many people as they wanted to, nonpartisan, right? So there actually was a Republican that ran, and if my memory serves me correctly, the top two candidates didn't get to go on and run for the general election, but the Republican guy, he got like 6,000 votes. Lewis Reed, who's seen more of as a moderate Democrat, got 17,000 votes, but then Kara Spencer, who is somewhat progressive, got 20,000, and Tishaura got 25,000. So to me, that actually showed that there are more people in St. Louis City who actually want people who are considered to be progressive now. Mm-hmm. And whether it would have been Kara Spencer or, in my opinion, or Tishaura Jones, St. Louis City, because they too got the most votes and they went on to the general election, I think we still would have had probably the most progressive mayor that we've had in St. Louis City in history, and it actually would have made her story, right? It would have been to know that a progressive woman wins because the votes were no longer split. So I think St. Louis City, especially those who are still in St. Louis City, are ready for progression, are ready for progress that is beyond just South Side progress. They really want that progress to be North Side and in the Central Corridor, which is something that that Mayor Jones did when it came to the Central Corridor development. The people who had development deals did not have community-based agreements. Mm-hmm. Community-based agreement is basically saying that if I'm going to develop in this area, I'm going to make sure that certain metrics are met, that this is actually beneficial to the community. I'm not just coming in and just doing a money grab or just setting something up and then hoarding the wealth. They didn't have it. So those deals got chopped. So again, I think it's things like that. People will understand that. And hopefully, my hope is that it attracts companies, it'll attract business owners, it'll attract entrepreneurs who want to work and develop and create a city that is focused on community development, community-based agreements, or community enrichment as well. So that's my hope, and I think there's enough people in St. Louis City, because like I said, that's what got shown. That was shown in the primary as well.
So I do think that I'm interested to see the future of approval voting, because I think that a lot of people, it kind of rolled out, and I think that people didn't necessarily completely understand what the process was going to be. Like, I was talking with a lot of people about, no, this is what this means. You got the opportunity to do this. Anybody you believe in, you can do that. I'm really interested to see what it does for the future of elections in the city of St. Louis. like how it continues to be leveraged and how people might change their campaigns based on it. Because I'll be honest, I mean, I think that Mayor Jones and Kara Spencer most certainly ran the most aggressive and effective campaign. So it didn't surprise me that they were the two that moved on. However, the margins were substantial. I mean, the
Yeah.
margins were way larger than I thought it was going to be. And I'm really curious to see how that changes the way that people go about future efforts to move forward in office.
Yeah, especially if they understand it, right? Because I actually did. I was working at a polling place in the 21st ward, and there was one candidate who was out there sharing information. They was like, literally was saying this is during the primary. So again, you can vote for more than one person, but there was a candidate literally saying, "Hey, only vote for me. Don't vote for anybody else." Right? That's a particular mindset. Now, the thing is, that person won, right? So I can't say that it was bad. I'm not gonna say it's negative. That person won. There were other candidates who was like, "Hey, if you plan on voting, please vote for me also." Like also, like every candidate to me has something different to offer. The 21st ward in St. Louis City, but there's just to know that people will wake up and real recognize or realize, like, wait a minute, I actually have options. It's not just one person in March.
Which is the point of the entire,
is
the point of the entire method, right? Is to say,
yeah,
you have options. You don't have to make an absolute right here. Like the easiest way I try to describe it to people is look at it like a tournament. It's a tournament to decide who's going to be mayor. So I mean, you get the opportunity to go in and really, you're not making your ultimate decision. That time will come, but you're going to get the chance to make a more whittled down, decisive decision from the people that you want to see be there, as opposed to some of the issues we had when we were breaking down the ballot back in November, and we were just like, who are these people even? Well, I think that what it did is it gave you an opportunity to really get a chance to know who these people are. And to, I think that in an environment that's not hindered by COVID, that's not hindered by some of the things that they had to navigate through this time, is going to really allow people to really put a lot more pressure on candidates and to go out to these town hall meetings that will return, and to these events when they're in public and say, hey, tell me for real what you're about. Let me know what this situation is really going to do and how it's going to benefit me in my ward and what it is going to happen in my backyard. So
right. And there's been some conversations. I would be really intrigued on how this operates in St. Louis County. Like, I think that would definitely also be a game changer in St. Louis County, because especially with the how dominant certain areas of St. Louis County are, and to know that we've had municipalities like threaten to leave because of doing certain things, like or like when there was discussion about better together. The merger, right? And how was it Chesterfield or
they said they was out.
Creve Coeur, like we out of here. We go join St. Charles, and that's a whole nother conversation, because based off of the census as well, St. Charles is even more big. Is even bigger now than St. Louis City, or population wise. St. Charles is even have more population than St. Louis City. So that should be interesting to see how the borders and everything else get redrawn as well.
I'm glad you brought that.
Change too much, but hopefully,
I'm glad you brought that up, the census, because that's another topic that I wanted to get into. That has been something that's evolved, over the time in between some of the last conversations we've had. What do you think that? Well, let me ask you this in a really easy way. Did Black people in St. Louis do right by themselves with their census involvement this year?
They do right. I'm wondering I'm wondering what right means.
So I'll define it for you. Let me dive into it a little bit further. I think that for me, the census and the involvement in it and doing what you need to do is tantamount to what we say when we say go vote. It's making sure that you're accounted for. It's making sure that you're there. One of the places I think that we struggle, and it's because the census is so rare that it comes around, is that it's one thing for me to tell you why you need to be voting in local elections. You're going to have several opportunities to do that throughout the year, if not annually, biannually. There's a chance for you to get involved and to do that on a regular basis. The census is once a decade. So getting the message out now for whatever's going to happen in 2030 is a completely different ballgame. It's going to be forgotten. Other things are going to come up. we're going to have 2 other presidents by that time. It's going to be a whole nother, sense of what's going on in the world. But I think that people are indifferent about the census to their own detriment. And when you start to look at how it means for votes and what it means for seats and what it means for, the big picture of things, I think more people would get involved in it. And I personally say there's never a point where Black folks should not take every opportunity they have to raise their hand and be accounted for. But from some of the returns that I heard back about participation in the census, I don't know if Black folks did right by themselves with their involvement in their initiative in doing it.
Yeah. So no, I mean, you bring up an excellent point, and one thing.
And can I correct myself? I'll say R. I'm sorry, I said there. R in our involvement.
Yeah. No, I mean, and when I look at I'm trying to piece some of the census data together now, and seeing how certain states lost or will lose like congressional seats, that will make a difference when it comes to the presidential elections. When I think about how certain states still have a lot of issues with gerrymandering, when we still have legislators who are redrawing the boundary lines, I find that could be interesting to know that there's a possibility of more of the Maryland Heights, Creve Coeur, Ladue area that could join the 1st Congressional District, which is Cori Bush's district, right? That's a possibility. It is not solidified 100% yet. But to know that's a possibility, right? Like that shifts the power dynamics. That shifts the money dynamics in the 1st Congressional District. And does it shift it so heavy, or does it shift it to where now the Congressional 2 district, which is mostly usually led by Republicans, is that open it up now for a chance of being turned to a Democrat? So it's challenging to say. To me, it's always challenging to look specifically at when it comes to Black people, because we do move around. We while we do have our older generations, like usually stick and stay, they usually be around for 10, 15, 20 years in one area. I mean, even I think of you and me, Matt, like I've been a St. Louis City voter and a St. Louis County voter in the last 10 years.
Yeah. This is my first time voting in St. Louis City, and it's a completely different experience. I'm actually glad that I was here to do it. It may be the only time that I'm a St. Louis City voter, but it absolutely was an interesting time to be here to do it.
Exactly. So I think that when we look at the migration patterns that have happened, or the travel, or whatever case may be, I think it's still gonna be. I think it's still challenging. I did see a nice amount of undercount. I really would like to see what the undercount, what was the theory behind the amount of undercount that happened. COVID definitely hindered and played a part for sure. Because I mean, even my organization, we literally had planned on canvassing, knocking on doors. And when COVID hit, we were like, nope, that's not good anymore. I don't know. I heard again when we talking about Missouri, the governors approved the amount of money to be used for the census. When you have places, or you had governors like California that actually spent 7 times more on the census for per citizen, 7 times more per citizen on the census in California than our governor here in Missouri. Our governor, he had a certain attitude, like if you get counted, you get counted. If you don't, you don't. Which I think, to me, shows that when it comes to, again, power, we're talking about numbers is power. Like that's one of the things, like there's power in numbers. Missouri numbers, to know that Missouri numbers did not change that much. If anything, they decreased. Missouri's population is decreasing. And it's only go back, like you said, in 2030, if something doesn't change differently from 2020 to 2030, Missouri most likely will lose a seat.
And I don't know if you know this, I don't want to put you in the spot with it. When we talk about population decreasing, how much of an impact is that on the African American community leaving the area?
Is it, to me personally, I think I don't know the exact numbers. I do know, again, I share this often. I do know that when it comes to the population of African Americans in Missouri, we're 12% of the total population, 12%. And when it comes to the voting population, we're 5%. Only 5%. So if there are more African Americans who are leaving, so that's a whole nother story, right? We when people talk about being on one accord and the black vote, like we're not always on the same accord. Like literally, we just saw how there was people who were supporting Louis Reed, and then there are people who supporting Tishaura Jones. So we are not always on one accord. But to know that there are, when specifically when progressive black people leave, they normally, like again, looking at our generation, when we leave, we're not leaving to black states, like people are migrating to Phoenix, Arizona. They move into different parts of Texas, Charlotte, North Carolina.
What's the presence, with the exception of Charlotte, because it certainly hasn't changed anything in North Carolina? What do you think, though, is that the presence of people relocating from an area like this is doing for those areas? Because, I mean, Texas is teeter-tottering. Phoenix,
Texas, Florida, Georgia definitely.
Yeah, and Florida, I believe, picked up electoral seats with this census right here. Whereas I believe Texas picked it up, Florida picked it up. And, one thing that I think that we know is that if you looked at the recent returns, you say, oh, that's a rough time for the Democratic ticket. That's going to be better for the Republican ticket in the national sense. However, we've started to see the tide shift in some of those states. And they've also been some of the states that have been the hardest on trying to change election laws too, because they know what's coming. And so they say the only way that they can change these things, and the only way that they can impact the fact they can't close the borders, is that they can change the rules once you get there.
Right. So I'm glad you brought it up. Like, so Texas actually got 2 new seats: North Carolina, Florida, Montana, Oregon. I hear people starting to go out to Portland. I hear people who starting to go out to Portland are moving, and they move from California. Like people who are moving from California are going up to Oregon now, because California, just the cost of living is just outlandish. New York that similar flight. Right. So, and the fact that like we had seats lost by Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, that's gonna be major, right? But to know it's Florida, so it really does. That's why I think it really does. It's really important to understand how gerrymandering impacts the rest of the entire country. Yes, we got 2 new seats in Texas, and I'm willing to bet it's probably on the outskirts of Houston or probably the outskirts of Dallas, but they chop and screw them and draw them crazy.
I think Austin. I guarantee you, Austin will have a big piece of that too. The people.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's why we need to reconnect with Texas State Representative Jasmine Crockett to see what's going to happen with that as well, to see how those things are changing. But I think it does play a huge part when it's all said and done. And case in point, when Chairman St. Louis Recorder of Deeds, Mr. Mike Butler, was on with us, he mentioned how he gets frustrated when he hear people say, "Oh, Missouri could be the next Georgia." Like we need a Stacey Abrams. He gets frustrated by that, and I actually went ahead and did a little math, did a little research, and it's amazing to me because I've heard people say they want to be the next Reverend Senator, U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock. Like they want to be him, or they want to be like the other U.S. Senator Ossoff, or they want to be like Stacey Abrams, right? And I looked at how many counties in Georgia are 20% or more African American compared to Missouri counties that are African American. We got about 3 in a possible. Like we can't even go bold. Georgia got over 100 counties.
Is it possible like a jack though, or is it a good suit?
Blackjack. Man, like it's with jokers high, like jokers and deuces high. Like
so you know what you're gonna get. You know which ones you're getting, but other than that,
But to know that Georgia got over 100 counties that has 20% or more African Americans, right? So I think that does say something to when there is a nice amount of people, nice amount of African Americans who have similar interests, who have similar philosophies, who have a desire to be, whether we want to call it progressive or whatever, it does make a huge difference in there. And in Missouri, we got we got like 3 in a possible. So, that's we got a long way to go before we come Georgia.
Yeah, there's a long way. We've got some steps we need to hit before we clear that one.
Yeah.
One of those things being, we look at the steps and we look at just kind of where the state of Missouri is at right now is that in a lot of regards, I think we're getting ready to see one of the craziest Senate races that maybe we've ever seen in the state, with some of the people that are popping up for this thing and getting
absolute crazy. Absolute crazy. We are going to be. This to me is exciting, only because we're going to have the focus on us, like the world/country. The country will be focusing on Missouri because of the high-profile foolery that will be taking place. I want to say another F word, but I think my mom watching, so I'm going to go say foolery.
It's one that I absolutely know that my opinion will have absolutely no part in making any part of the outcome be what it is. This is between them. I'll put it this way. This is going to be them sorting their house out. But I agree. I think that Missouri is going to be one of the places that you're going to see one of the most down in the dirt fights between who really is running the GOP of all.
Yeah. Yeah. And to know, so we know already that the current U.S. Senator, not Josh Hawley. I can't think of the dude's name. I'm just drawing a blank.
This is because you think they're all the same person. That's why.
To me, it might as well be. Because the way they vote and stuff.
I want to see how long this takes. I'm starting the clock. Because I know the name. I know the name.
Blunt. Roy Blunt.
There you go. Thank you. I was gonna get a running clock. We're gonna get a clock up on the screen for how long? How long did Marco really legitimately not know who Roy Blunt was?
Hey man, it's been a minute, man. It's been a long day, man. It's been a long week, and it's only this day, whatever this day is when y'all watching. It's been a long week. So it's been mentioned that Roy Blunt does not plan on running again. He plans on retiring, stepping down. That's what people say. His seat is up in 2022. Somebody actually mentioned that he might reconsider, but who knows? That should be interesting too. But then certain other people have come out the woodworks. Mainly one of Matt's favorite people in the world, former Missouri Governor Greitens.
That ain't the woodworks. He climbed out the coffin. His candidacy looks like the 3-minute mark of the Thriller video.
The 3-minute mark of the Yeah, man. Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to say the least, because what we actually do see, and it's not just in Missouri, but I think this is going to be one of the test grounds for this. How much do the Trumpian candidates still have? Greitens was somebody who rocked with Trump, flat out, plain and simple. So was
his whole platform was based on that approach to politics.
His whole entire approach, right? So was U.S. Senator Josh Hawley's. Okay, so will Trumpism, Republicanism, like solid being a Republican, will that prevail? Are people sick and tired of it, or do people miss it? That's gonna be the question, I think, and I think it's gonna be one test to see, because we still see how it's so amazing how there are some disappointing as well. Like when I think of people like Senator Lindsey Graham, who was completely like, "Oh, January 6th was terrible, it was bad. Shame on Trump. Terrible, bad. I can't support him. I don't like him," and blah blah blah, all that crap. And then now he's like, Trump ain't that bad no more. We can't win without him. We can't win without Trump. Like, he did a complete 180 on what happened on January 6th and his view of Trump. And somehow Trump still got juice. I mean, he like Frank White, who went to jail, right? And still got he still got juice outside. Like, he's still making moves. Like, he's still maybe
he'll actually become Frank White before we all said and done.
Right. I mean, he really will be the king of New York then, right? So we shall see. We shall see.
That's what he's always wanted, right?
Yeah, like his daddy, He always want to be like his daddy. stunning like his daddy, you know? So we shall see. And I think, and that's my thing. I would like
I just got to notice too that that Mark McCluskey, I'm sorry, is entering the Senate race as well.
Oh, you want to share who, for those who may not know?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Him personally.
So this is
they probably used him. They probably portrayed him on Halloween, perhaps.
I'm sure you know him from the meme, but this is the attorney that was waving the gun at the protesters and whatnot. He's now running for Senate too, as if so. Now we've got the corpse of Eric Greitens. We've got Mark McCoskey. We've got potentially the specter of Roy Blunt sticking around, and who else knows what's going to happen out in the podunks who are going to step up and say that they need to be part of it too. And this is before we get to Kansas City and say what's going on out on the west side of the state.
Yeah, before we get to Kansas City
or Springfield.
Springfield, Columbia, the upper part of Missouri. That people who can see Iowa from their front door type people. Like we have no idea what's going to happen, man. I mean, this will be interesting. I think this could be also if the grassroots organizations across the state of Missouri actually work together and figure out what are people really hurting about. What can they really win? So I think there will be, and actually my organization and I have been doing work on dealing with Medicaid. Like, talk about this just real quick because over 53% of Missouri voters said, yes, we want to expand Medicaid in November. Over 53%. Or was that August? I can't even remember anymore, right? It's been that long. And then the Missouri House of Representatives said, oh, we know the voters voted yes on this, but we don't like it. And we don't believe rural Missouri actually voted on this. Although 1 out of 3 rural Missourians actually said yes, but we're not going to pass. We're not going to provide the funding for Medicaid to be expanded. So then it goes over to the Missouri Senate. The Missouri Senate was like, oh, is the ball in our court? Nope, we don't want it. Here, Governor. We also are not going to provide funding for something that the Missouri voters voted yes on.
Right.
So then the Missouri Governor Parsons is saying that, hey, you know, if the legislators don't want to fund for it, I'm not going to sign for it, which is actually against the law, which is actually against the Missouri Constitution.
Well, I don't think that he A, knows anything about that, or B, could care less about it.
Can care less.
I get really confused about exactly what Mike Parsons, not his purpose, because I know how I feel about that. I get really confused about exactly what his agenda is.
Yeah.
Protecting police officers?
So you would think it would be protecting police officers, right? But the Senate also just passed a bill that Parsons could sign or veto, possibly a law that says local law enforcement does not have to follow the U.S. federal laws around guns.
Yeah.
So
Missouri's seeming more and more like a place that's going to stay pretty regularly in front of the Supreme Court.
Missouri is becoming not just that we know. They used to say, you know, with the Midwest, right? I feel like Missouri's becoming the middle finger to like laws. Like what? That's a law, a federal law. Middle finger to that. Like It's just a certain boldness and audacity. Maybe I don't know where they get this from. I don't know how they become this type of mindset. I really don't.
I feel very strongly that there's 2 Americas right now in every possible way. It might actually honestly be closer to 4 or 5 Americas right now.
Yeah.
But in Missouri, there is very clearly one version of it and then a completely different version of it, which is sad because it's why, you know, I think people talk about, let's go back to the thing we said about we need a Stacey Abrams and stuff like that. When these Senate seats come up, it's going to have absolutely nothing to do with the things that we're talking about and like the concerns we have. There is no chance that I see, and I would love to be wrong about this, I don't see any way that there's a Democratic or a progressive or a liberal, however you want to categorize it, an opposition to the GOP that's going to get over and have any chance at that seat.
No. I as of right now, I don't see it. I don't see anyone that is countering any of the Republican talking points. Like, abortion is bad, guns are great, and government is bad, and Democrats are government, so they bad too. Like, I don't see nobody saying anything that resonates with enough people. For people to literally say, oh, like socialism is bad, socialism is terrible, socialism is horrible. Oh, where's our Medicaid at? Or not Medicaid, our Medicare. Like, I'm a senior now. Where's my Medicare? Like, the fact that we have a National Guard, we have a Missouri National Guard. Like, well, it should not be utilized like as a private army, but but like that's part of social, like that's part of being social, having social nets, social safety nets, having a Missouri National Guard. I went ahead and got the vaccine. Didn't really want to, but I got it anyway. And I got it at the Delwood Recreational Center. You know who gave me my shot, Matt? Missouri National Guard.
I think they've administered more shots than anybody in the state of Missouri now at this point.
Exactly. Social services. Like, so I think it's going to take, I don't know what type of background. I don't know what type of connections. That's the thing, man. I don't see anyone that's developing connections, and that's the only thing that I wish. Like, I wish a lot of things could have been different. I wish Obama, when he lost Missouri by less than 4,000 votes, really would have continued to develop and craft organizations here throughout the rural areas. And I wish the DNC didn't just give up on Missouri, because I think this is where we at. Like, so it's gonna take. So with that being said, I do have a nice amount of faith in like, for example, Chairman Mike Butler, who does have a good understanding of how to connect the people across different areas. The executive of the Democratic Party, Randy Dunn, actually had a conversation with him, and he has an amazing resume, as well as previous legislation experience. So we definitely, would love to have him on. But he also understands that we got to be more, like, he understands that the Democratic Party has to be more than just the name Democrat.
Yes, that's true. And that now that would be a whole nother hour for us to go down that path, because we certainly see, we both believe in that and believe in it in different ways too. So I think that maybe we bookmark that for next time, because I think that it might be time for that conversation to happen. And I think that a conversation like that happening does require a Mike Butler or, someone else who's plugged in there. Because here's the thing. I would love for Mike to come on and tell me why I'm wrong about believing that about the Senate seat. I don't know. I know that the people I see popping up, there's a couple of things that can happen here. I'm going to go into my world for a second. I'm going to go into the sports world for a second here, because I see this happen all the time. So you'll have two guys on one team that are having phenomenal seasons, right? And what happens is, let's use the Heisman Trophy, for example. They're both up for the Heisman. Neither wins it because they divide the vote on very important things, very small things, I should say. Maybe one person believes the quarterback did more. Maybe one person believes the running back did more. They're more important, so they should get the vote. And then that ends up canceling those people out. And then what that ends up allowing happen is somebody else comes in, and then it's like, oh my God, how'd that guy win? Well, because you all were worried about between these two people. Now, here's the thing I don't know. I don't know if there's a viable Republican candidate that's going to come in who's not one of these, the corpse of Eric Greitens or the Halloween character that's the McCuskey. But, maybe I don't foresee that guy making the run. He's more like a Rudy, it feels like to me, in sense of somebody that could go up. I don't quite understand how Eric Greitens is back, but money talks, and, people believe in that whole thing. But in this new wave of the Republican Party, who is the Republican, the old-fashioned GOP candidate, as opposed to the MAGA candidate, influence candidates that are still out there? I think that Missouri is going to be is to the big point we made at the beginning. I think the Missouri is going to be one of the biggest areas where you see the fight within the GOP play out that could end up leveling them entirely. So maybe Missouri's, the other half of the aisle does have a shot for this. And I'm just not convinced on it yet.
Yeah, no, me either. I mean, and so I kind of look at it very similar. I compared Missouri and the nation similar to each other, because we had Trump, who was utterly like ridiculous and radical. Definitely got parodied on SNL. I even told people, stop laughing. This ain't funny. Like, this dude is going to win because he's good for media.
Yeah.
He's good for media.
Yep.
And then his vice president, Pence, is not that good for media. That's why, like, the fly that landed on his head during the debate got more attention.
But Pence is the type of Republican that wins Missouri.
Exactly, right? So that's what I was going to say. So therefore, you had a Greitens who was that radical Republican that people looked at, would make fun of now. Like, he got that type of attention now. But then you had Parsons, who's like a Pence. Parsons and Pence are that old guard GOP. That's stable, that's stability, right? Like, Parsons and Pence are the friends that go to college with you that your mama like. Like, your mama be like, oh, you going to college? I'm concerned. But, oh, Pence and Parsons with you? Okay, good. Go ahead, baby. Go to college, right?
You'll be fine.
Like, go ahead. Like,
they're like going to Sunday school. Even if it's not for you, you feel like you're on the right track being there.
Yeah, right. So therefore, I don't know if Parsons grooming anybody, to our support, or who will Parsons put his support behind? I mean, that's gonna be one of the questions as well. And we know, to my understanding, Parsons and Greitens definitely, I mean, they already been going at it. Like, Greitens they got Twitter beef, like, so we gonna see. We'll see what happens next. So it should be like exciting. And I don't know, that's nothing. I don't know who in Missouri or the Democrat Green Party or anyone. I don't know who is formulating a coalition of people across the state. I think they could, especially with this Medicaid not being respected and not being voted on, and the fact that this will have to go to the courts, which will also cost Missouri money, right? So
there's a lot of things, I think, that if somebody wanted to step into the zone and make a stand against the establishment, if you will, they could succeed in Missouri. I think one of the things could be, the stance that Mike Parsons took, that's been, I think, adopted in 19 Republican-led states now, regarding the unemployment benefit that's still in play, where they're stripping that in June. And, that's something that I think there's a lot to that. There's a lot to it that I think that it's not as nuanced as either red or blue or whatever in between. That's a topic that goes in a lot of different directions, but it's also different directions. It's a place that if you wanted to rally the support of people who are potentially not usually on your side politically, that's it. That's a place that you can go to and say that he didn't support you directly when you needed it most. Here's what I will do.
That's the point. Yeah.
And that's a crack in the ice where you start to open up more opportunities to talk about more things. And I think that you could kind of pick and choose what side of the aisle that you're on right now. So I think it's a really, really important place for people that do hold an elected seat right now to pay attention to what they're voting for. Pay attention to what they're excited about, because there might be people who just aren't rocking the boat because they intend to do something bigger later on.
Yeah, definitely, man. I think you bring up an excellent point. When it comes to the fact that we are now, like, there's way more conversation than ever about universal basic income, more than ever. There's more than ever. Unfortunately, it took a pandemic for us to get to this, but there are way more people discussing about it now.
The pandemic stripped the protections away from individuals and companies, and everybody was just laid out there like, this is what you got.
Right. If we looking at history, if we looking at from when we had this, when America was impacted by the Spanish flu, the Great Depression was like maybe a decade later. So I pray and hope that our leaders, our political leaders, our economists, I hope they have a better understanding of how to prevent a Great Depression after a pandemic that I've been in discussions with everyday people about the inflation, about hyperinflation, about how this is gonna sound real. I don't even want to say this out loud. There's a chicken shortage right now. It's chicken, like, people can't find the chicken. It's not that.
Now you feel like, now it sounds like you're on the scenario. This is odd.
Right. But people are like, there's a milk shortage, right? It's like, it's a gasoline shortage. Like, all of a sudden we don't have the basic necessities and that's going to start impacting other aspects of life. So that being said, I think whoever also navigates that rough sea of economic ups and downs, whoever comes out as a victor or come out as somebody who was there for the people, who made resources available or brought resources to St. Louis, to Missouri, whoever does that, I think has the best chance to show improvement and say, hey, when the rest of America was in a shortage, I brought resources. I was the connect. I was the plug.
Yeah. Well, as the month comes up closer, I believe that unemployment benefit is going to be suspended in June, early June. It's going to be eradicated essentially at that point. I definitely want to come back around to that and talk about that, and I think in more of a roundtable format, because there's a lot of things to that, and I know that we've got some positions we want to talk about it here on the program. Before we wrap up today, though, one of the big things that happened in Missouri politics this week was the passing of the bill to limit police use of chokeholds and sending it to the governor's desk. The reform, it was approved 140-4. I mean, and I was just like, that stunned me that was the outcome, because for all the things that we've talked about already, to see something there's either you're for that or you're against that on a larger level, and for that to come from this state, that confused me. So I'm hoping that maybe you can tell me why that actually happened.
So I want to make sure that I give a lot of credit and respect to Missouri State Senator Brian Williams and him working on crafting this. I honestly don't know how I feel about it yet, right? Because when I think of like a chokehold, well, like, I don't know how many I got to research and found out how many chokehold deaths we've had by police in Missouri. Mm-hmm. It's usually not a chokehold. It's usually some bullets, right? So how much of a reform is this? Is this saying, I'm asking, I do not know. Is this just saying, oh, well, this one way that police have been killing people, we're not going to do that no more. And it's also the least way. It's not like, what is it? Like chokehold, getting ran over by a car, bullets to the back. Like, I don't really know like where they rank, right? I honestly don't know. So I don't want to take away from this effort. But I think it's important to understand, and I really can't wait for Chris to come back through, and especially for Brian to come on and be able to explain like detail, like it's more than just what is a bill, how does a bill get passed, right? It's more than just a little cartoon. It takes a lot of effort to get something introduced, to get it read, to get it reread, to get it perfected, and all those other aspects to be something that actually says, yes, people, like you said.
And there were a number of things that went into that, but I'm glad you say that, because over the next couple of weeks, we are going to have Senator Williams join us here on the program to talk through the bill, talk through what it means, some of the processes that are in place, some of the hopes that he has for it. Is one that he's definitely made to be one of the signature parts of his time serving the state. There were some complications with it. I know for a fact that the governor threatened to veto the bill if it would have kept in a provision that would have given lawmakers the power to issue subpoenas towards requiring people to testify before a legislative committee.
Right. Right.
So
and also in the bill, this is what I find interesting, because I learned this from having a conversation with Randy Dunn of how Kansas City does not have control of their police department. Mm-hmm. So in that reform bill, the Kansas City, basically this reform bill says officers don't have to live in Kansas City to police Kansas City. I think that was probably one of the selling features. And recognizing that St. Louis just got control of their police of like maybe 10 years. I gotta check, like maybe 10 years ago. So the concept of like, and that's one thing I've learned when we did conversations across the state, the term local control. When we talk about local control in rural areas, usually talking about farms. Like, can a farmer actually have control of his farm and not have to be forced to use certain seeds from certain companies? That's local control. We're talking about local control in St. Louis, Kansas City. We're talking about our police department. Can we actually be controlled? Can we actually? So, and it's incredible to see how people feel about. I think we talked about this. How do we feel about people who don't live in the city policing the city? Yeah. And this bill says people who don't have to live in Kansas City in order to be policing Kansas City.
Yeah,
So I don't know how.
And you know what? And it also is a good thing for me too, because I do actually have some contacts in Kansas City who have reached out and said, are interested to talk about what some of these things mean on the western side of the state and things like that. So we'll be welcoming them on the show as well to get a little bit more of a feel, I think, for what it is that's going over there, because obviously everything that we talk about is going to lean heavier on the St. Louis end of things, but there's a lot more to politics, the emphasis as on Black folks, and just what happens in Missouri. Some of the other things that I found in the bill that were interesting to me, that were additional reforms that are kind of in play around this entire thing, is the decriminalization of HIV, the creation of a use of force database, which I think is an important step towards what you're talking about with the issue of, saying we stop one thing, but what are we doing about probably what the big thing is? And what's being called an affirmation of a prosecutor's ability to reconsider cases when evidence emerges proving innocence. That's a big thing.
That's huge.
That's huge. And I will quote the St. Louis County prosecuting attorney, Wesley Bell, who says that until now, a prosecutor in Missouri had no way to present evidence of innocence to a court. In some cases, that led to grievous injustices, and that this law is a step in the right direction. So, I think that it goes back to the thing we talked about before, about when bills come to the table, about look at everything that's in it, because what the headline is might not very well be what the real meat of it's going to be, and what the biggest impact that comes of it could be. So definitely looking forward to having Senator Williams on to talk about that, to walk us through, some of the decisions that were made and are going to be happening with that. Was talking with his office, talked with him and talked with his office over the last couple of days, and that's going to be something that's going to be getting on his calendar.
Exactly, because there's actually several different bills on a local level, state level, but on a national level, right? And I think it's just really careful. We got to be really careful and make sure we read these things. The fact that we're saying, like, a lot of enthusiasm about the chokehold, right? No chokeholds. It came from George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
George Floyd was not killed by a chokehold.
Yeah.
So it doesn't. So so we have to be careful.
And I'm glad that you said George Floyd, because I intentionally didn't bring that up this show, because I want to have a bigger conversation about that. That's almost going to be a special episode that we have dedicated to that, to the Derek Chauvin trial, to all the things that came of that. That's a topic that's too big to be just a footnote within one program. But that's the awesome thing that I feel about this show, having it back on its regular schedule and getting into play here, because there's no shortage of things for us to get into and talk to.
Never a dull moment.
Yeah, absolutely not. So what else, man, before we get out of here, what else is on your chest? What else you've been involved in? I know you've been advertising a few things that you sent my way on Facebook. What's coming up that, people need to know about, need to be involved with here in the St. Louis area?
Yeah, man. So my job, my daily job is to work with congregations and people of faith in the matter of politics or political things. A lot of people say, church and state need to separate, right? Separation of church and state. I just let people know that the church is protected from the state. State is not protected from the church. So as church leaders, as congregation leaders, pastors, clergy, we can definitely put pressure on our representatives and our senators. So we actually are organizing to work with congregations to actually have meetings, in-person meetings, or either Zoom meetings with their district representatives. So that's one of the things that's people we're gearing up. We already have several congregations who are interested. If anyone is interested, definitely reach out to me, DeMarco at mcustl.com. Definitely reach out. And we are working with congregations, because that's one thing that we've continued to see is that a lot of people do not know, if they do know who the person is that represents them, they may not have a relationship with them. If you don't have a relationship with them, then there's going to be it's going to be more challenging to actually just provide input, right? Or either hold them accountable. So that's one thing that we're looking forward to. And majority of the time, a lot of the representatives are excited to actually meet people, especially during the summer. And I think as the world kind of opens back up, we'll have more like probably in-person meetings, probably even outdoor, or at least still, separated events. So that's one thing. That's one of the big things. We also are we starting to have organizing training. So those who may be interested in learning how to organize, learning how to develop the one-on-one relationships with people, how to have effective meetings, how to develop teams, things of that nature as well. We starting to do that too on a very local basis. So we just excited to see what's coming up with that. So those are the two main things as well. And I do know for those who might be interested, there are some paid opportunities with other organizations to collect some signatures on some aspects around reforming St. Louis as well. So if anybody is interested in that, hit me up and I'll be sure to make connections with anybody who maybe looking for, who don't want to return, who don't want to return to that fast food joint and want to make at least $15 an hour or something like that. Hit me up.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, hey, everything that you can do to rally the voices of people comes a lot of different ways, and you can always make your voice heard and you can always follow out. So with that, man, we're going to go ahead and bring it home. But, hey, definitely, we're going to be hoping that we get Chris in the fold next week.
Yes, man.
No emergencies pop back up.
Send out the bat signal a little earlier, It's all good.
Chris is somewhere lifting a car up with one arm right now, saving some
life. One arm.
But we're really excited about some of the people that we've got lined up. Definitely not going to come back and just creak into the room. We're going to come in and make some noise, have some good voices across the city, across the state. I think they're going to really add a lot to the conversation. So as always, you can find Politics as Usual and every other program we've got going on the SOLC Network. Follow us on Facebook at SOLC Network. Follow us on Instagram at the same tab. You can find later, we just dropped a new episode of The Scenario. We've got a new episode of We're Coming For You. There's always something else that we're bringing out here. But we appreciate you staying locked in with us here. I'm Matt. That's DeMarco. We'll catch y'all next time around the bend. Peace.
Peace.